Erin. Welcome to TechConfessions.
Hi, Amy.
So, we're going to ask you a different question. A little background information here.
Thank you.
All right. What was the first time you ever thought about security?
Yeah, I would say the first time that I thought about security was actually, I was driving to the mall in Burlington, Massachusetts, and I was passing by the RSA headquarters, and they were looking for employees, and I was working for a company that was tanking big time. And I was like, I need a new job. And I never really talked about security a whole lot. I had worked for a networking company, so we did like VPNs and things along those lines, but we never really did full force like security. And I applied for a job and got hired. So I didn't really grow up in like a security kind of realm. It just kind of like fell in my lap, which is most of my career, which I love. And it was really just starting to work at RSA and really understanding that security mindset, getting certifications and how to think. And it's really what I think security is. It's a mindset. So it's probably
I got to dig into that one. Like that, tell me like how to get into.
Yeah.
Because are you terrifying people at cocktail parties?
Yeah, so it's funny. It's always like, I think it's great. Like I love talking about security, and then they're always like, wow, like you totally scared us. I'm like, that's not what security is supposed to be about.
Okay.
It's supposed to be simple. It's supposed to be seamless. It's supposed to be something that, and you're already doing it automatically, right? Like when you left your house, you locked the doors, and you maybe put on an alarm system, or maybe you have a dog that actually is used for protection. Like you're doing it inherently in your life, but we don't think about it because it's just easy and it's seamless and it's second nature. And that's how security should be. It should be something that's just second nature and just something that's inherent to what we're doing in life, both in our personal and our business life.
How do we start to think more that way? Because, it's like two questions in one.
Yeah.
Because I see a lot of networking people who I think it's become more of their problem. I'm hearing a lot of this, right?
Yes.
We didn't think that way before. We're trying to, like you said, a mindset shift. So where are we on the spectrum of like networking person, kind of their problem, kind of have to deal with it, to like scare people at cocktail parties as my slider bar?
Yeah.
So like how do we navigate that?
Yeah, so there's lots of ways, and everyone has their theory, which is another reason why I love security, is because it really is a discussion, right? There's that extreme of, you encrypt everything and you lock it down and you don't let anyone touch it, and there's the other extreme of like, wow, if we left everything open, there would be nothing to really have to protect, or it would be a different shift in this mindset, right? So we're at this point of, in my opinion, that we're not really winning the security war, and we have to change that mindset. We have to rethink what security means to the business, because we thought about what it meant in our lives, right? We didn't have car seats initially. Like my mom always tells a story of like, you just have the kid rolling in a box back and forth in that back seat. And remember in the back of like the station wagon?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Taking
and you're
a
like,
nap on a long trip.
And you're waving everyone, no seatbelts, no whatever, right? And then so we rethought it. The bad thing is you always have to wait for something bad to redo them. You don't really want that to happen in business, and we really don't want that to happen in our personal lives. So we try to just rethink what it should mean. Try to think about, you got to prepare for the things that you don't know, or imagine situations that, extreme situations, and that's not a scary thing, right? It's not something that you should be afraid of doing. It just should be like second nature. So it always becomes one of those things of understanding this end-to-end concept of security, that it's not just about attacking the threats, but trying, we've always said being that proactive and doing things like using infrastructure that's more secure, right? And at each of these levels of the OSI levels, right? Which is funny, I saw that Law and Order. So I love this idea of really trying to manage it from end to end and having everyone kind of involved in that conversation. Because I think once you start conversing about it and talking about it, oh, all right, I understand, right? I understand why you put that control in. Right. I understand why you're not doing this, right? I understand why I have to wear a seatbelt. It's what you've taught your kids to do, is you've kind of trained them. You don't want them to get their hands burnt. You kind of say, this is what will happen if you don't do it. And we have to just think about that from a business perspective and really have security as a business conversation.
And it's in some ways very appropriate. Maybe we should call this security confessions. Like when you talk to customers.
I love that, please.
Spin-off idea. When you talk to customers, what are some of the things that you hear that they probably do feel a bit confessional, to help them get started down a path?
Well, first of all, when you talk about security, you really have to up-level it and have that conversation. You can't start throwing acronyms, and you can't start throwing the fear, because then they'll automatically get defensive, right? You have to be able to say, again, relate it to what we do in our normal life, right? We're here in Barcelona, right? you always want to protect yourself, like where's your purses, where's your phones, where's your wallet. You don't want them in places that it's a high risk situation, right? So you kind of manage that appropriately along those ways, but you also have to use risk as a positive thing of saying, okay, I understand the risk, I know where I'm at, I know the amount of people that are around, I see people on bikes or I see people on skateboards I can easily maybe grab and go, I can't run after them, right? So you kind of look at risk differently as something that's positive, as something that can help you make better decisions. And we've always looked at risk as something bad. So you kind of have to like up level it, and kind of what I try to do is make it just really, really simple. Again, because you keep hearing that, banks, you're really making us afraid of what you're doing, of what's out there. And you're like, well, that's okay. But being afraid of something shouldn't be a bad thing. It just means that you have to make better decisions based on what's happening. Yeah. So that's what I would try to do. And I want them to change their mindset of how they think security. And that's why, my background, I have an engineering background, which is great, that I've always been able to think. And I'm like, well, let's think about something differently. Like, why did you make that decision? And how was it based from a business standpoint? Was it about the data? Was it about the people? Was it about the devices? Was it about the policy? Like, what are those things? And let's just have a normal conversation about it. And then just trying to change it a little bit, rethink the kind of concept and what it means and what you should be achieving. And then hopefully it just becomes a second nature, because again, it's not something to be afraid of. We're doing it automatically in our lives.
Where do you think we're going in terms of security? I know you've talked about we're not necessarily, we need to rethink, we're not outpacing the risk otherwise. As data becomes, we have so much more surface area exposed in some ways, right?
Correct.
How can we all be better and think this way a little bit more?
I would say, just like we've learned kind of growing up, you need to stop and think before you do kind of any actions. Stop and think before you click that link, right? We are still the weakest links when it comes to businesses. No matter what policies and controls and devices or anything.
The layer 8 problem.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, spin off. So I think that's, it becomes that just stop and think. It's what we do in our day-to-day life. It's what we really need to start becoming accustomed to, right? I remember my grandfather used to believe nothing you hear and half of what you see, right? That kind of concept, does this seem right? Is this not inherent? Just don't do this kind of over and over monotonous activity and not think. So I would say it's probably the first thing. And I know that's tiring and that's a lot, and you're but I don't think from a security standpoint, and that's why I say, yes, you do, right? You absolutely are doing that in your life. You automatically, again, lock the door when you leave the car, right? That's these automatic things that you do because you know what could possibly happen, right? Or even stuff like hiding, the easy pass, the toll pole, you know what I mean? You're oh, maybe I should hide that in case somebody breaks in.
Right.
So again, I think the more that we just make it a little bit more natural conversation, I think once this becomes not this fear, which is what that's just what I want to talk about, is don't be afraid of it. And if you are afraid of it, don't use it as something that's going to hold you back.
Right. Take an action instead of the ostrich head in the sand approach.
Because you can't, right? In a business, we're talking about all of these new, capabilities and new technologies, and you have to move forward with these because that's where technology is going. I always talk about security at the speed of technology, right?
Oh, that's great.
Or at the speed of business, right? So you have to be able to have them in parallel and realize that it will happen. It takes a while, but that's what life is all about, right? You fail and you learn, and you fail and you learn, and it's okay to fail. Even in the security realm, most companies have failed. We always was a joke, there's two types of companies, those that have been breached and those that admit that they've been breached. We've been saying that for years, right? And you're of course, it's another breach. We become numb to it.
Yeah.
So I think I'm hopeful, right? Because I think if we're changing that conversation, we're changing that mindset, and the more we talk about it and be it's not be afraid, and we have it at every point of that conversation. Could you imagine if every one of these presentations or these sessions had just a single slide on it about security? It would start becoming second nature in our head, and we would start asking those questions to either sales reps or to other vendors or anything along those lines, right? You ask those questions when you buy a car, right? What kind of, what are the seatbelts, or now they put regulations in to have certain type of seatbelts, or things along those lines. So I think I'm hopeful, because I think the conversation's starting to change as we kind of realize it has to. We're not winning the battle, we obviously want to, because it's never ending. It's never going to stop.
Right.
So
there's
why
always
use
some clever, yes.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's no longer about kids in basements, right? It's not at all like that.
Yeah.
And that's still the case. And we encourage that almost to the point of because now we need people to be okay, that's great. please continue to do that.
Right.
We want to like learn from you. We want to be able to kind of like drive that. And I think it's a good thing. I have hope.
Excellent. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Erin.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
And when you're ready to make your tech confession or maybe security confession coming soon, join us at techconfessionstheshow.com.